Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and on this Thursday afternoon, I'm delighted to have some of the old school back. We've got JP Mason and Kevin Graham, and it was many moons ago that us three first appeared on Acsom. Can you remember the day, guys, through in the toll booth? JP came through in that vintage retro Celtic away strip. Now, JP, you're good at this. How long ago was that? Was that about 4 years ago now?
Five
5
years.
Wow. And in that 5 years, I remember going up to the toll booth, and the subject of a lot of Kevin and I's conversations was around European progress. And we were talking about it 5 years ago. We were talking about it at that time when Brendan Rodgers was the manager first time round. And we're going to be talking about it again today, because obviously last night, I'll come to you first, JP. Absolutely got an evening. I mean, we just done that to Motherwell, right? And you don't think for a second, how are they guys feeling? You don't care, do you? But then last night, we got a wee bit of a taste of that ourselves. How was it for you last night? How was the atmosphere?
Can we not just talk about music for an hour now?
We could actually, aye. I bet we don't get many complaints. That's what you're in for, yeah.
Aye.
Look, I was really up for it. I did a few sherbets in the Brazen Head beforehand with Scott McCorry of the Homeboys podcast.
Big shout out to Scott.
Only exclusively hang out with people that do Celtic podcasts, which is obviously complete nonsense. He's just a really good guy, and we'd been talking about getting a drink together for a while, so I met up with him and his mates Tam, John, and Jim in the Brazen Head, and sharing stories and all the rest of it as you usually do. And Jim, older fella, I'm sure he won't mind me saying that, his first Celtic away was Madrid, 1980, and he paid, I think it was £119. Either £119 or £116 he paid to get there and back, and I was like, 1980, that's quite a lot of money. And he was like, I kind of just threw everything at it and went there for his first trip. So we was in there and had a few pints, and then we got the bus from the Brazen Head out to Celtic Park. They run like a couple of buses from the bar to take folk out. So we got there well ahead of kick-off. So I was there for the build-up and stuff. And obviously a lot's been made of the Rhiannon Downey thing. I find it unfair that she's been singled out for criticism, especially if it's personal criticism. I just think it was maybe not the right move to have anybody singing before kick-off at a Champions League game. As I said to you earlier, I was like, it could have been Celine Dion doing You'll Never Walk Alone. I just think it kind of messed with the juju a little bit. And the atmosphere, I mean, it wasn't what I expected, put it that way. I think it was a lot of people on edge. And when that edge, even when we went 1-0 up, I think people were still like, we know how these movies go. But not for a second could you have thought that we'd have a goal disallowed and then concede a goal in the last, minute or 2 minutes of stoppage time. So I'm not as downbeat as maybe I probably should be. Obviously, it was absolutely gutting, and especially to them, of all people. I had to nip into town to do something earlier on, and walked past the hotel in St Vincent Place, and there was a bunch of Lazio fans just sort of standing, not like fully decked out in colours, but I could tell that they were Italian. I could tell that they were obviously Lazio fans, and you know that feeling when you're coming out of the hotel the next day after an away trip, and you've won. And if you've won like that, then even better. And they've got their own back on us for 2019, which was a sore one to swallow, particularly the way we played. But I'm like you were saying before we came on, I'm not like to set everything on fire and everything's terrible and all the rest of it. I'm not ready to light that match. You know, I'm quite optimistic about where we're going under this new manager / old manager.
Aye, same as well. No, this is the thing. Going into today's bulletin, I never ever think about what people are going to reckon. You know, am I a happy clapper? Am I a cheerleader? I don't think like that. But I don't have that same sense of despondency, because it was gutting, and I'm just waiting. I don't know how many people are going to use the word roller coaster in the comment section, but remember, it's banned. You can use waltzers or ghost trains, but keep the roller coasters. And Rolls Royce. Don't don't compare a player to a Rolls Royce, because it was that kind of night. But during the game, talking to Kevin McCluskey after the game and James McKenzie during the game, and then obviously letting it all settle, getting up this morning, having a look through the socials, seeing what the kind of reaction has been, I don't feel all that despondent. I do think, yes, we're going to be talking about things we could do better. But the big tagline, Kev, is what did we learn? What did Rodgers learn? And what did we learn about Rodgers? You know, because there's this big thing around his first period, the blot in his copybook being the European performances and the results more than the performances, I guess. This time round, we're thinking, right, is he going to put it right? Has he improved as a gaffer? What do you think we learned about Rodgers? What did Rodgers learn about his team last night, Kev?
I didn't think Brendan Rodgers learned anything about his team that nobody wouldn't have been able to point out beforehand. He's got a lot of guys there who, look, last night was a gut punch.
Roller coaster. You're going to say a roller coaster there, eh?
No, I wasn't, mate. Last night was a gut punch. It's a gut punch that probably leaves us on a standing count in Europe this year. We've still got a chance to maybe get ourselves back into it, but it seems very, very unlikely. What did it say about Rodgers? I mean, I think there was a lot of hindsight with the Nat Phillips sub, his game management, but I think if we get away with that 1-0, one each, nobody mentions that sub. That's just after the event. There's circumstances surrounding that. The circumstances surrounding that are we've got 3 centre halves who weren't available, right? Nat Phillips has come in half fit. Cameron Carter-Vickers has come back in half fit. The other one of them, Nairoki's no fit whatsoever, and Lager Bielka suspended. So he hasn't got much to work with there, right? And Liam Scales is bloody outstanding. So he hasn't got much to work with there, right? But we lack a bit of discipline. And that's something that I've noticed that he says quite a lot this season, that he reckons the players are trying to force things. They're no letting the game develop in front of them. And what he says about the winning goal last night was that it wasn't Cameron Carter-Vickers' fault. We went out of position before we had control of the ball. The team went out of position, and by the time the ball come back in, look, Cameron Carter-Vickers was a risk last night. I mean, I think even in the first half, we tried to force things far, far too much. And I noticed this is a theme developing with Rodgers since he's came back. We didn't try to force the game against Motherwell. When we got that ball back, we were calm. And we need to learn to do that in Europe. We've got to learn to do that in Europe. A couple of times last night in the final third, we just panicked at times. Or we're no used to the pace. I mean, look at our goal. Our goal was utterly delicious. I'm going to use delicious because it seems to be the word for us to use now. But we didn't do it often enough. We didn't do enough to win the game, but we left ourselves open to the gutting scenario that actually happened. What's the first truism of Buddhism? Life is suffering. Well, that's watching Celtic in Europe.
We've got a bit of Buddhism in early there. No doubt we'll throw a bit of music in at some point as well.
What we'll say about Rodgers is this. I think he's improved as a manager since he's went away, and the 2 performances show that. Because last night, that could have been Gordon Strachan in the dugout. We were very pragmatic. Every player knew their job. And the games before that, he was very open. The first time round, he was extremely open in Europe. This time, we've got a 3-3 draw against Man City, which is one of the best games I've ever seen. But last night, in the last 2 games, we've been very tactically organised. Everybody's knew their job. We were more than the sum of our parts. So I think he's improved as a manager, and I think that stat is completely rubbish.
Yeah, you've seen the stat running around that we shared it this morning as well about him being the worst over 20 games, etc. JP, and I don't really want to focus on that because what I want to focus on is how he has improved or otherwise since first time round. And I think Kev's right. I mean, there was a control about our performance that, you know, previously maybe some players are still adapting to always trying to force the issue, like Kev says, always trying to go for another attack, another wave of attack. And Brendan isn't really setting his side up for that. He's trying to make it so that he can, you know, kill the momentum of the opponents at time as well. And, you know, right through that game, and I think probably, I've never seen the final stats of the possession, for example, but all the way through the game, it was 50-50. chances were kind of like evenly distributed between the two sides. And I do think that we probably did at one point look as though we were going to win. I think that at one each, that I probably agree with what Brendan said last night. I felt that Celtic were going to be the side to win the game. And Xander Mack comes in here, happy with the performance, disappointed with the result. If Dyson cut his toenails before the match, we win. We were looking at an angle of that today, and it was so clear. I mean, it wasn't clear cut at the time, JP. I'm pretty sure, like Palmer, you weren't waiting to see the outcome of the VAR check. And you're thinking at that moment, wow, it's happening. You know, this is the first home Champions League win in 10 years. It's actually going to happen tonight. And obviously we had the rug pulled from under our feet. So we're going to be looking at some of the pros, some of the cons. But I want to pick up on what you said about the pre-match entertainment. And obviously the club are always looking to try and do stuff before the game. I'm into music. I like the idea of it. What I've been hearing this morning is that it killed the atmosphere a bit, you know, before the game started. But you know, if that's the case, that's the case. But like you said before, Rianne Downey doesn't deserve abuse for that. And I've seen a lot of abuse online. She's a phenomenal talent. She's an amazing singer. And I don't think that's fair. But at the same time, I expect that now because that's what we have come to expect from Twitter, online, social media, and it's unacceptable. I also think that if you're going to put somebody out there, protect them. And what I mean by that is, obviously, a lot of the abuse that I've seen has come from the official tweet. If you're Sky Sports, Celtic Football Club, if you're going to put somebody on a platform, you protect them. You've got to, JP. You can't just put it out there and, you know, throw them to the wolves and allow them for probably 48 hours to get quite a lot of abuse, because that's unfair. You might have enjoyed it, you might not have enjoyed it, but I don't think the personal stuff is acceptable. So I'm going to come to you then, JP. What have we learned? What has Brendan learned from last night?
Well, he's learned that we're still a good bit away. Not a good bit, but we're a fair bit away from being the type of team that can take scalps at that level. I mean, you're looking at going into last night and the form of Lazio and everything else, and I know people were playing it down or sort of playing their form down, but you're thinking, this is probably our best chance to get a home win that we've had. Now, see that the whole 10-year thing, we haven't been in the Champions League for the last 10 years. I mean, what is the actual number of
games?
4 or 5? No, I mean, like times we've actually been in the Champions League proper. Is it 4 or 5 times that we've been out of the 10 years? Because I think of all the, not all, or a good few attempts at qualification that we've failed at. If you think of, well, under Dyla, we didn't get into the Champions League, and one under Rodgers, AEK Athens, one under Lennon. So that's 4 straight away. So I don't. It sounds bad, and of course it is bad. But it's not as if we've been in the Champions League every single season and we've played, you know,
60 games. Games
every season. Like that would really be alarm bells if that was the case, because then you're like, well, you've been consistently in that competition and you haven't won a home game. Then of course the knives probably could and should be out for the management of the club from a higher point, not just the immediate manager or coach. It's more about, you know, if we've been in that competition and raking in 35-40 million every year from that competition and we've not won a home game, that's a different story. But I think he's got cause for optimism, for positivity. There's good young players there. There's players there that didn't play well enough last night. You need players in games like that to be minimum 7 out of 10. Minimum 7 out of 10. You want, in an ideal world, you're wanting 8 and 9s all over the park, and we didn't have 8 and 9s all over the park. I don't think if people do say that, then I would disagree. I think Hatate, not to single him out, but wasn't at it last night. And we know how good Hatate is. I'm not saying he's not a good player or anything like that, but last night on that stage, when we really needed an 8 out of 10 from him, I'd say we got a 5.5, maybe a 6. And that's being generous if I'm saying 6. And you can't afford that. You can't afford that in midfield. And I mean, look, that goal as well. We carved them open for that goal. It was such a good, well-worked goal. And I thought Yang as well is a good bit off it. Again, I'm not willing to say, oh, he's not good enough and never will be good enough, but he wasn't really good enough last night, was he? Because he didn't really provide anything to make them sweat. So that's two players I've singled out that aren't at an 8, or aren't at a 7 or an 8 or a 9. They're below that, and at this level, you can't have players. You can't carry players like that. You need everybody to perform. So I think maybe on a different night, maybe against Atletico Madrid, those guys have an upturn and they do get a 7 or an 8, and that little bit of level going up could be the difference between us getting a point or 3 points. I think that's it. I don't think we're a million miles away.
This is my thoughts. I reckon you look at that team, JP, and you look at, and people might say let it go, but you look at the aspects of the side that have changed from last season. If it was a case of Brendan Rodgers inherits Angie's squads and we run with it, then I think you've got a different story. But that isn't the case because we lost key players and we've not replaced them. By the way, I'm going to bring up Jungle Lion's comment about Liam Scales because he was outstanding. Kevin Graham said that. He was brilliant. He was absolutely sensational. And I think he has been. I never thought in my life, I said this last night, I never thought in my life I'd be looking at my notes and saying Liam Scales almost scores the winner with an acrobatic scissor kick, an overhead kick. I never thought I'd see that against Lazio in the Champions League, but that's what happened last night. And with regards to Yang, I've got to agree with you. I was surprised that he was picked, and it's no hindsight because I said it in the pre-match. I was surprised that he started, actually. And then when you look at that left-hand area of the park, it was clear that Lazio were targeting Taylor. There was the high ball over Taylor, and I thought Scales done really, really well to shore that up. But at some point, I was expecting maybe Maida to switch over to the left to give Taylor some backup as well, because that was the area of the park that Lazio were trying to target. We're going to be looking at some of the areas that, like you say, we're not a million miles away, JP, but the frustration for me is we had an answer at right wing. We've not got him anymore. We had a great partnership at centre-half, and this season we've not had that partnership. We're throwing guys together, and Scales and Phillips don't have that understanding yet. So that's the frustration for me, but it's something, Kevin, that Brendan Rodgers has inherited. And what he hasn't inherited from the transfer window that we've just come out of is 3 top-class starters. And this is something that frustrates me. And people might think, oh, you're rolling out the recruitment thing again because we didn't win the game. But it is relevant. I mean, you're going in there and you're thinking to yourself, how many of the new guys have really made that big impression? Palma almost did last night. But if you've brought 3 guys in and they're going right into the starting 11, as they did in Angie's first season, and they're making an impact, that's a huge benefit to Brendan Rodgers, and I don't think he's had that advantage since he's came back, Kev.
No, he hasn't had that advantage when he came back. What Brendan Rodgers paid for last night was recruitment under Mark Wall since the 15th of July last year. That's what he paid for last night. There's no way you can blame Yang for not being up to standard, because that's his second Champions League game, his first start in the Champions League. He's came for the South Korean League. So that's a massive step up. A massive step up. The young lad looked a wee bit overawed. He had a couple of wee bad touches. He tried. He didn't hide, which sometimes young lads don't remember Abada against Real Madrid.
Yeah.
He just completely bollocks the bed, man. That's what he done. So I'm not going to give Palmer came on. Maybe easier to come onto the game when we've got complete control of it. He done well when he actually came on, but you can't judge any of the players that have been brung in because they're still settling in at the club. What the players you can actually judge is the players that we bought last season, and the only one that's been an absolute standout, an absolute star is Alistair Johnson. And last night again, he just reminds me of a solid fullback who can absolutely do anything. Now that's a star. All the rest of them, most of them are away on loan now, So that's what Rodgers is paying for, and also the fact that we cashed in on Starfelt's personal circumstances, an unbelievable offer for Jota, which is absolutely unbelievable. And as you say, Aaron Moy retiring. There's 3 things there that you couldn't have legislated for, because I don't think they legislated on any Maybe Moy retiring, maybe they knew slightly about that. But Aaron Moy was a massive part of our team last season in the middle of that park. What Rodgers likes, and what I think they're maybe seeing when you go to Hatate, Ange Postecoglou likes players to play on instinct. There's an instinct. Do it first time. Get rid of it. Brendan Rodgers likes players to use intelligence. This is where Matt O'Reilly stood up. Matt O'Reilly's went, all right, you want me to actually think about what I'm actually doing here. I can get in with that. Atate's got a way to go, but if Rio Hatate listens to Brendan Rodgers, he'll develop into a far better player than he would ever done under Ange Postecoglou, because Rodgers will teach him the whole round discipline of the game. When to play the ball, when not to play the ball. There was a couple of times he tried a first-time pass last night, like right back to and put us under pressure, and you're just going, take the touch. Let it see how it flows. Let's see. And there's been a couple, and I think you can see that. Maeda, look, he had his good and his bad, but I think he had a decent game. But
yeah,
his defensive work rate, his defensive work rate is great. In the first half, especially, how deep did Kyogo come and show real football intelligence to keep the ball? That's what Rodgers' teams are built on, football intelligence. And at the moment, I think we're still in, especially at that level, we're at this thing where we're trying to force it at that level. Whereas domestically, now we've learned we didn't need to force it at this level. But at the higher level, we're trying to force it. And I think once Hatate gets up to speed and listens to what Rodgers actually is telling him to actually do, you're going to have a fabulous all-round midfielder, because he's got everything in his locker that he actually needs. The passing ability, the vision. Sometimes he just needs to take that wee calm down, take that breath and go, right, what am I actually going to do here? No play the forward pass, no try and play the quick pass. But that's been built into him.
yeah.
And that's going to take ages to actually change. I think Kyogo, last night, that was the first time I've seen him and look really, really a great technical player in Europe. Like the way that he dropped all over the pitch. Big scalesy, man. Fantastic. Like, he's the guy we thought Shane Duffy should have been. That was like Shane Duffy. That's Shane Duffy. I thought that was the boy for Boyzone there. Sorry. I thought
Shane Duffy as well. Oh, it's Shane Lynch.
Shane Lynch.
Talking to Lynch. Sorry to jump in. Talking to Lynch. Who's seen the train spotting video with Mick Lynch driving the car? You seen it? No.
No.
Nah, and he smashes into Rishi Sunak. Have a look. It's great.
You have a look at the left back. Now, if you watch Lazio, I'm a big admirer of Mauricio Sarri. I think he's a fantastic coach. If he was ever to manage Celtic, we would thoroughly enjoy the football that his teams play. But Lazio have got 3 outstanding players: Luis Alberto, Immobile, and Felipe Anderson. And that's the 3 that they try to hit all the time. So when you say that Greg Taylor was targeted, they always try that ball. That is their aim, because Anderson is absolutely superb. I thought Taylor handled it well last night, but we all know the limitations of the team. We all know the limitations of that squad in a whole. It does need improved, and whether that's coaching improvement, mentally improvement, or you bring in other players, it's still got to get there. But you look at last night. I'm not going to blame Yang. I'll judge Yang next year in the Champions League or in Europe, because this is a steep learning curve for him. And this is one of the things I think that we're going to need to get into. If we didn't beat Atletico, we've got to bring these guys up to speed. We've got to give them experience. We've got to actually get them in there and get them playing. And I saw Petrov moaning about a development opportunity. We're a development club. Sorry, Stan. That's where we are now. And we just need to hope that we get the recruitment spot on. And as I say, I'm still positive. I'm really, really positive, because I think Brendan's learned his lessons. And last night, and even against Feyenoord, there were spells where we looked like a competent European side.
Yeah.
But we just need that wee bit more discipline and that wee bit more structure about us, and we'll be all right.
You're talking about limitations and where you are able to coach into a player up to a certain level, Kevin. And I think also the mentality is something that Brendan Rodgers is very good at. getting in about a player's mentality as well. But I do think that for me, the limitations, you can only take someone to a certain point.
Aye.
And no matter what you do or who's coaching them, you can never take them that wee bit further. And that's where you bring in the quality, and that's where the recruitment has let us down, I think.
I didn't mean this in a bad way, but we still need a big enforcer in midfield when we go to that level. We do need an out-and-out guy who just sits there and goes. I love Callum McGregor, but Callum McGregor's on the way down because he's 31. It's a natural, it's a cycle, ain't it? He's done all the development he can get. He's 31-year-old. He's maybe lost a wee bit of pace over the summer, and so his performance levels are going to dip just because Mother Nature's going to take hold of Callum McGregor. And you've got to have a look at other areas of guys. The goalkeeper, Joe Hart's 36. He couldn't do anything about the 2 goals last night. Nothing about the 2 goals whatsoever. But that's going to be something that's going to need to get sorted. We're going to need to try and build a centre defensive partnership. The left back area, Greg Taylor's utterly fantastic domestically. He's done well. But then the question's got to be asked by the coaching staff. Not by us, because we haven't got a clue. We didn't care if he can actually be better or anything like that. But the coaching staff will look at that and go, well, Greg Taylor's peaked. That we cannot get Greg Taylor any higher than that. We cannot get Liam Scales any higher than that. And that's when you need to actually improve the squad. But that's not us to make the decisions. That's a coaching staff. Eh? We just look at it and go, well, it might not be, but then the coaching staff might be seeing some day in, day out. Yang got a game for a reason. Didn't get a game because we signed him during the summer. We need to play him. He got a game because Rodgers thought he could do something. Yang's got an intelligent, technical brain, but he's raw with his final ball. He panics at times when he gets into certain situations, and you've got to hope that comes by time. Palmer seems a wee bit further on with that. He seems to be quite comfortable in the final third about what he's going to do.
The thing with Yankev, by the way, and I don't disagree with that, but I think had he not been hooked at halftime against Motherwell, he'd have been hooked at halftime last night. I think that Rodgers was probably looking at that situation and thinking, how's this going to harm him, JP? Young guy coming over here, still adapting to the game, and we're taking him off at halftime 2 games in a row. I honestly think, you look in the first half, he was the guy for me that I thought, right, we need to improve that area of the park. I'm really keen to bring other people's views into it, so I'm going to bring some comments up. But on the Hatate question, again, over the piece, JP, I think that he was pretty under par. He's not hit the heights that we've seen under Ange Postecoglou. We've not seen it yet under Brendan Rodgers. But I'm going to point out 2 points. The first one being, I sent a wee picture. It was a strike in the face quite early on, 20 minutes in. By the way, that's the second time in 2 weeks he said that. He already started the game with a black eye, JP. And it was something that wasn't even looked at by VAR. It's a sending off. At worst, it's a sending off. And did it rattle him? I don't know. There was one moment he played a Hollywood pass. The box office passes that he likes to play. And he played it to Maeda. We win a corner out of that. But it didn't happen often enough, JP, is I guess what I think. But I mean, let's talk about that sending off, though. I mean, am I being harsh against the Lazio player, or do you think that's something they got away with one there, I thought?
Well, they did, but I don't know what obviously with VAR still being really new to us. Like, I mean, if you go to so Lewis Palmer's getting torn a new one on Twitter for celebrating that goal. There's a viral tweet, not viral, but it's got a bunch of likes and everything else, obviously from one of them. And he's like, oh, check that guy. Their new guy celebrated about 25 different ways. And then the goal got disallowed and then they conceded in the last minute. Ha, ha, ha. It's like, got quite a lot to laugh about at you guys. So maybe just keep your head below the parapet. But I mean, that's the thing that VAR does. It takes the complete joy out of course, that guy's going to celebrate. And I don't have any issue with him celebrating however he wants to. He can rock the baby. He can grab the corner flag and do an Elvis like Lee Sharp. He can do a somersault.
Peter Grant against Rangers in the 2-each game.
Absolutely. He can throw that in there as well. He can do whatever he wants. He scored in the Champions League at sold out Celtic Park. You know what I mean?
Me against Kilsnott and Miners Welfare in 1994. I took my top off and everything. We were only 8-1 up at the time, and I scored a 3-yard recur. Always remember it. It was one of the best moments of my football career, man.
And you took your top off?
I took my top off,
Wow.
Kevin, I take issue with that because that was in that particular fixture. This was the Champions League. The guy's just come in from another country.
That was my Champions League.
He's not to ingratiate himself with the support, and I've got no issue with it. I mean, what a moment that must have been. And then the next thing, you're standing looking at a screen, and then but for the hairs, like, I mean, it's just absolutely, he barely gets anything on that ball, and that's why it's ruled out. And folk will be like, "Oh, well, dry your eyes" and all that, but it's so incredibly harsh. And the VAR, they found a problem with that. Is that because we scored the goal? So why was the elbow or the punch not looked at? I mean, did they just miss it, or did they look at it and go, "Well, that's fine"? If they looked at that and thought that's fine, then I've got an issue with it, because I don't really know how, in this modern age of football, when Feyenoord are getting a penalty for a brush on the face, you know, like with no violence. With no violence.
Yeah.
With no violence. It was an arm out and no violence. The guy wasn't hurt.
There was no intent. There was no intent. Absolutely no intent.
No. You could actually see Hitachi's face jolt with the impact. Because it was a punch. So
watch it back, JP. Watch it back, right? And the Lazio player, there's a great angle where as soon as he's done it and he's made contact, he looks round at the referee. Split second, he looks round as if to say, "Oh, I've been caught here." But the Lagerbielke one, he doesn't know what's happening with his hand. It's just a flailing arm. It's, you know, for me, it's maybe a wee bit reckless, but there's no intent with Lagerbielke. He gets sent off. We give away a penalty. This is 20 minutes into the game. And at that point, you know, you're looking at the situation thinking, I've heard the word margins getting thrown about, and it's true. We're already 1-0 up. That's a game-changing moment if a Lazio player gets sent off 20 minutes in away from home. So that's why I'm bringing it up. It's not just to moan about the refereeing. It really is to say, why wasn't it looked at? Because it should have been. I mean, the Maeda one, I sent you guys an angle today where you can't even see you actually can't even see the contact. You see it from another angle when there is contact, but it was so tight. And these are the margins. That's the new word, margins. We used to use the word caveat all the time. Now we're using margins. These are the margins.
I never use caveat. I hear it so many times. I'm like, I've trained my brain to not say caveat.
I'm adding it to the band list alongside roller coaster and Rolls Royce. Echelons, aye. Kev.
These are the margins. They are
Elahoussi, there's another one.
Elahoussi, aye. These are the margins, though, when you go to any level in European football. You're not playing. You're playing teams that have got a higher technical ability than what you face usually week in, week out. I'm not discrying Scottish football when I'm saying that. You just have a look at Scottish football results in Europe over the last 20 years to see Scottish football is pants. End of. Let's move on for even having that argument. But you have a look at the margins, and this is where I go after the Feyenoord game we use. We've got the money to reduce the margins by bringing in sports science guys, psychologists, all the best Kingway that we can make these guys as best as they can be. And that's where it should be. It's not just about signing guys for 10, 12 million pounds. It's about signing the right guys and guys that want to learn and guys that can improve in that. And that's what we never done last year. And for folk to be writing off guys who just arrived in the summer are Kingway. What that is wrong. It's completely wrong. And look, Yang wasn't great last night, but I've seen enough to ken there's a player there. And
I think it's been a wee bit harsh on Scottish football. I do think we do punch way above our weight in many respects. I think the operation of Scottish football lets it down, Kev. I mean, we've got something here in this country that is so well supported, but we're let down time and time again by those in charge, those in the highest echelons of the SFA, those in charge, right? And even this week, we're hearing that there was a clause in the contract with Cinch where they could pull out 3 years in. Why have they pulled out? Everybody knows why they've pulled out, right? So we're constantly just shooting ourselves in the foot as a game. bowing down to the wrong people time and time and time again. And I think
we shot ourselves in the foot in 2012.
Of course, aye.
When we
Of
took
course
the
we did.
KY jelly for the bigot pound. That was it.
And how many people
everybody in
stood up to
Scottish
that? Very, very
Well,
few people stood up to it,
Alan McCoy wanted them named, did he not?
Oh, yes, he did, aye. But, I mean, these are the deep-rooted issues in Scottish football we're talking about. I think Celtic, as you say, Kev, there's things we can improve on. And you're right, a lot of that is behind the scenes. And Brendan Rodgers implemented a lot of these systems at Celtic Park first time round. So I'm actually confident that side of the game, with his thorough nature, will be fine. The issue is with regards to the quality of the players coming in. And of that batch that's come in, JP, there might be 3 or 4 absolute, gems in there. We've not even seen Tillio playing yet, unless you were at their United testimonial game. So, I'm like Kev, I'm not writing them off. What I'm saying is, there was a clear distinction in the chairman's report when the financial results were released. And it spoke about players you can develop and players who can make an instant impact. So that's what we're talking about. And we know that the players that you can develop are those guys of a certain age and within a certain structure in terms of the transfer fee, against those ones that you push the boat out 4 million, 5 million plus. And we've had a few of them. Kyogo and Starfelt were 4.5 million quid. Yes, I get there's no guarantee because I know Barkas and Ayeti were the same price, but you're shopping in a different market. Why are they more expensive? Because there's more quality to them, or you're buying from a more expensive league. And that is the frustration. When you look at that last night, you're thinking Rodgers could maybe maximise Taylor. He could maybe maximise Yang. But if they don't have the quality in the first place, JP, there's only so far he can take that. And that's where the frustration is. 3 starters, these guys that can make an instant impact, to quote that report, makes a huge difference last night.
I think it does. And I think that's been widely sort of expressed by a lot of the support. There's been a lot of stuff today where people are analysing the recruitment with a magnifying glass and sort of saying, out of all the people that have come in the last year and a half, who's actually in the team and making that impact. And I listened this morning on the way back from town. I listened to the BBC Scotland coverage of the game, and it was good that it was actually people related to Celtic that were on it as opposed to normal, because it's usually just jobs for the boys. And
it is. It's getting worse.
I think Aidan McGeady speaks really well. I think he's pretty, from somebody that I didn't really expect him to be good as a pundit. He is actually. He speaks well, and his knowledge of the game is good. He's played in different leagues. He's played in the Premier League. He's played in Russia. He's quite cultured, I would say, as a footballer, and still playing, obviously. But I think the way he was talking about was like, well, you don't really need guys for tomorrow. You need guys for today, and that was the kind of overriding theme of the after the game between James McFadden and Paki Bonner was pretty much what they were saying. So that's only what everybody else is saying. It's not as if we've come up with some daft new formula that has only been spoken about here. It's been spoken about everywhere. And on the subject of Scottish football shooting itself in the foot, see the game on Saturday against Motherwell, I did end up going to watch it in Simon and Jackie's pub, and on Motherwell pay-per-view TV, and it was stalling, like, so there was a lag, so it would like just stop and then spin, and then you'd be waiting, and then it would come back, and then so that led to a situation where it was still 0-0, and I'm standing up the back with a fresh orange and lemonade. I was working, so it was I thought I didn't indulge, but a guy walked by me on his way to the toilet and very sort of quietly just went, didn't want to ruin it for everybody, but it's 1-0 Celtic, right? And I went,
and you're watching it live,
and I'm like, what? And he's like, walked by me, and everybody else in the pub didn't hear him, right? And he genuinely said that, and he goes to the toilet, and I look up at the screen, and 20 seconds later, Palmer bangs it in, and the place goes mental. And he comes back from the toilet, and I put my arm in, and I was like, you said that? I heard you say that. And he was like, I tell you, mate, crystal ball, and all that, right? Then he sits down, and then Motherwell equalise, and he's over. I didn't have signal on my phone, so I didn't have Wi-Fi. I didn't have signal, so I couldn't check. So I'm at the mercy of this screen, and this guy who's obviously managed to get live score or whatever, and he goes, 1 each, and everyone goes, oh, come on, no way. And then the next thing you see it unraveling, and then the guy next to me goes, oh, this must be it, and then bang, goal. Then a different person, a disembodied voice from somewhere else in the bar, a few minutes later shouts, 2-1 Celtic, and then you just hear, oh, shut it, you, there's no need for that. Like, this is serious.
JP, honestly, you're reminding me of a situation back in the 80s, right? And anybody who's tuning in from the villages of Fife, West Fife villages, there was a situation in the 80s in Oakley where Eddie's Bookies had a lag, and so they found it away in the Greyhound pub, whereby they were able to actually go and put bets and everything on because he was too slow. He was wondering why he was losing all this dough. And it's a wee bit like that. But as you say, it's kind of like amateur hour. And that's the one thing about Scottish football, you know, in terms of the fan base, and you see the figures constantly in terms of European football. It's a sport that's so well supported in this country. But I don't think that we are rewarded just with the simple professionalism, the quality that you should be getting as a football fan, JP. And that's one example of many, many examples. But again, I'll be going up to Don Max myself. There's another wee plug for the pub later on this afternoon, because we've got a gig there tomorrow night with the one and only Chris Sutton. I'm going to be asking him his thoughts on a few things that's happened in Scottish football this week. Susan Finlay, good to see you. Totally deflated after last night. However, looking forward to seeing everyone. Oh, God almighty, there's a hat-trick. Don Match tomorrow for Chris Sutton. Should be a great night. Looking forward to it. Chris is always good entertainment. Barry O'Sullivan, afternoon all. Still feel gutted for the result, but proud of the effort the boys put in. We need to get, 3 quality players. That's my kind of thoughts on it, in over the next transfer window. And then you'll start feeling that that's too late. It's maybe for the next campaign. And this is the frustration, because it's almost Groundhog Day in that respect. Kev, I want to talk about a few of the individuals. There's been loads of talk around Carter Vickers, whether or not, that was a mistake. Was it with hindsight? If Carter Vickers isn't fit, he's not on the bench. Is that not the way it works? If he's not 100% fit, he's maybe no Mark Sharp. Can he play 90 minutes? It's clear that they knew before the game he's going to be playing 30 minutes, because that's when he comes on. And he's the guy on the park that you would least expect a mistake like that from, Carter Vickers. But I don't think it's down to a bad decision by the manager, I've got to say.
No, I think it's down to the fact that he's missed 7 games with a groin injury, and that is it. That is the bottom. That is the bottom line. And the only reason that he gets 30 odd minutes is because Lagerbielke gets sent off.
Yeah.
And Nairoki's injured, and there's a whole load of circumstances that it means that you've got Nat Phillips, who's sort of half fit, and you've got Cameron Carter Vickers, who are sort of half fit, and we're trying to shove them together to get a full 90 minutes out of a semi-decent centre half of guys who are no match fit. And you can put that down to bad planning, or you can put it down to bad luck. It depends what side of the coin that you want to do it. You want to see if it's heads or tails there, eh? Look, it was always a gamble bringing him on. He hasn't played for 7 games. That is, always remember, I'm going to name drop here, when we were going up with George Connolly, Paul, and he went like that. Even in the 60s and 70s, it took you 5 or 6 games to get back up to Mark sharpness. The game is now a lot physical. It's more sharper, it's faster. It must be ages for these boys to actually try and get up to, they're better conditioned, right enough, eh?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But there will still be, especially if you're, it wasn't as if Cameron Carter Vickers is coming in to face Kilmarnock at the weekend. He's coming in to face international class players. He's coming into a European game, and he's got to try and pick up the speed of that right away. And he done all right up until that point.
He was also up against a fresh off the bench Guendouzi, who's not a bad player. They've got a buy clause for him for 15 million plus add-ons. So they're bringing a guy like that off the bench.
Yeah.
And as my mate Chris said last night, totally changed the game for them, and he did play really well. And I thought Carter Vickers played well in terms of he does that kind of scoot pass that he always to play it out to the right. So his distribution when he came on was really good, and he contributed to the game in that respect. because he's a good footballer. It's just unfortunate for him. You know that mistakes can happen, and that they will likely be punished at this level. But I mean, Lazio didn't cause me great concern. That was that one moment where you're like, oh, this is the moment where they really show their class. This is the moment where if they put that in them, they'll show it now. And as soon as I saw it unfolding, I was like, oh no, they will make this count. This won't be an over the bar. This won't be a loose pass. This will be clinical, and it was.
This is it. There wasn't a period of that game, JP, I don't know if you felt the same, where it was wave after wave of attack, you're under the cosh and you're riding your luck. I didn't feel that at all last night at any point against Lazio. But what happens is you look at that as a gaffer and you're thinking, right, that's an individual error. So you can remove that for your game. You can remove that from the team's psyche, and then in another night it's a one each. And you look at the first goal, you think, right, that's really poor defending from the corner. Kev says that he doesn't blame Joe Hart. I was the same last night. I just thought we didn't defend that well enough. And I don't think we defended the corner at the weekend well enough. Fair enough, Scales gets the header, but it was the second ball. We just didn't defend it well enough. And going back to your point about centre-halves, Kev, and the fact that we cobbled two centre-halves together last night to get 90 minutes, and I agree with that as well. I do think there is an element of bad luck, because we brought in three centre-halves in the transfer window, and we're still struggling to play with two of them last night. And last season, we knew it was an issue. We brought Kobayashi in, handpicked by Ange Postecoglou. That hasn't worked. But this season, I think it's been down to bad luck.
It has been, and the injuries happen, and you've got to plan for these injuries. And this is where what people say we have now replaced Starfelt. Well, I have a look at this sort of profile of Nairoki, and I'm like that. He's like Starfelt, but 5 years younger. So I thought we'd maybe got a player on the level of Starfelt, but younger. Maybe more development, because Starfelt's at 28 now. He's not going to develop anymore. So that's why we allowed them to move on. And it has been unlucky in that situation that we haven't had Cameron Carter-Vickers plus one of the three centre-halves that we actually signed alongside them. We'd only have been two centre-halves, because Phillips wouldn't have been anywhere near us if we didn't have the injuries. And that is unlucky. That is just the way it goes. But I don't think Lagerbielke or Scales have let us down. I don't think they've let us down.
I'd agree with that.
You can argue whether they're good enough or all of that, but if they lads let us down, no. That's all I'm asking for. I'm gutted about the result, but nobody let me down last night. There's a wee bit
of lag. There's a wee bit of Motherwell FC lag on your stream, Kev. Sorry, a wee bit of static. By the way, Feed the Bear, thank you for your support. Keep the faith. We are keeping the faith. The old saying, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, is on my mind this morning, because you're pinpointing certain elements of this that on another night. And it can't always be this way, JP. We can't always say on another night, because it's like talking about football. I'm saying on his day. But the guys that you speak about who on their day are never good enough. You know, they just give you wee flashes, and it needs to be more than flashes that we get from this group of players. Limitations, not domestically. I think we're absolutely fine domestically. I think limitations in Europe were there last night for us to see. But I do want to talk about two other players before we wrap up today, JP. The first one being Matt O'Reilly. There's been a lot of talk on Acsom about O'Reilly. People will say Scales is the most improved player. I get it. I think O'Reilly has taken his game up to another level under Brendan Rodgers. He's obviously embraced the incoming gaffer, and it's shown in his performances. That I thought again last night, it was so accomplished. It's not about no looking at a place. He looks really comfortable at this level.
He certainly does. I watched him at full time. In fact, my mate actually was walking above me as he was leaving the ground, because when he leaves, he walks along the north stand and goes out a door, towards the forge, and he saw me sort of standing hands in pocket, as I always do, and I've always done it. I've never just been like throwing my seat up and stormed out. I always like to absorb the moment, whether it's winning or losing, and I just was looking over and seeing the Lazio fans celebrate, and just sort of, like I said, absorbing it, because it makes the winning a lot more sweet when that does happen. And so Chris took a picture of me showed me it last night. I actually see a picture of myself in a really solemn moment. But I was looking over at Matt O'Reilly as well, and I just saw how gutted he was. He looked absolutely. I mean, from a distance, obviously, I'm in the bottom of the north stand, and he was kind of probably closer to the dugout. But I saw people going over to him and just sort of, he's shaking hands with Lazio players, and his teammates are going up and being like, "One, it's all right." And he was just like, he just looked so dejected because he'd given everything. He'd set up a goal. Mm-hmm. A really great pass. He played really well. I thought, he was an 8 or a 9 last night. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I don't know how anybody could disagree with that. I think he was an 8 or a 9. And again, this is a guy that 2 years ago was playing at MK Dons, and now he's playing in the Champions League. Mm-hmm. It's really, really great to see. And well, having had the experience that I had last Friday as well, it's even more great having. I tell the story.
Get it out there, JP. Come on.
Right, I'm going to look right at the camera. Right, see for anybody that's in the comments, that's in the live chat and the YouTube. This is for you, right? I'm not telling this story to make myself look good because it's got nothing to do with me. I'm just telling this story because it was an amazing moment and it was an amazing experience that I shared, and I know for a fact that they'll probably be watching, and someone else in Denmark will probably be watching. So last Friday I was working Nick Kershaw over in Moore. Mm-hmm. Obviously excited about that, meeting Nick Kershaw, etc. That's a byproduct of my job, that I sometimes meet people that you would never normally meet in any other day of the week. So I'll maybe never see Nick Kershaw again. He's not my pal. I had some chat with him. It was cool. The guy's an 80s legend, wrote The One and Only by Chesney Hawkes, in case you didn't know that, and played at Live Aid at Wembley Stadium, played 4 songs at Live Aid. So that to me is a big deal. It might mean nothing to somebody else, but it's a big deal to me. Anyway, but half an hour after doors, I get a text from Barry Ferguson, not that Barry Ferguson.
Thanks for qualifying that, but
he's not doing box office for gigs in Scotland, but and Barry texted me and he was like, "That's your Matt O'Reilly's dad in?" And I was like, "No way, no way." So I went out and I was like looking around. I knew what he looked like. I'd seen pictures of him with Matt O'Reilly, funnily enough, with the trophy on Trophy Day. And I turned around and I saw him sitting with his wife, Gita, and I just was walking over to just say hello, give him some wee guy chat, because that's what essentially was happening there. It was the equivalent of somebody going up and asking for a selfie, but I wanted to just have a chat with him. And as I was going over, he pointed at me and went, "I know you, Celtic podcast." And I was like, oh, what? No way, man. No way. And then I sat down and spoke to them for a bit and had some chat with them. And then throughout the gig, just ended up chatting to them quite a lot. And they were so sound. His dad loves music. Me and him were just like throwing, people get annoyed when you and I speak about music. They would have been very annoyed about the lack of Celtic and Matt O'Reilly chat in that conversation, because it was a lot about music. But we did talk about Matt O'Reilly. I said, "Oh, I absolutely love your son." And they were like, yeah, we think he's all right too. and then his mum, Gita, told me that her mum watches Acsom in Denmark. So she may well be watching right now. So
that's a big shout out. Big shout out.
Go efter med dig, vi älskar Matt. So hi Liz. In
that's
Copenhagen. I think it's Copenhagen. I might be wrong on that, but that is it. So, and then the next morning I wake up, Matt O'Reilly signed a new deal and he scores a last minute winner at Fir Park. One of the most real sort of turnaround moments ever. It was amazing. So there you go.
I enjoyed that, JP. I enjoyed that story so much, and it is Celtic related all the way through. I mean, Nick Kershaw, it was a big 80s hits. I remember him for, and I didn't know he wrote that song for Chesney Hawkes.
Yeah.
Every day is a school day on Acsom. There
he wrote songs for Let Loose as well. Remember the boy band Let Loose?
Of course I do. Aye.
But it was actually Dom O'Reilly that told me that. I didn't know that.
Brilliant. There you go. Rhino Hatate. Wouldn't it be good to meet Nick Kershaw? Yes, it would. There you go. The things you see, and that, yeah, you do remember the big hits, of course. But thanks everybody for getting involved. I love that story, and the fact that people do tune in, people do take their time to see what you're saying. And I don't think there's been much bad said about Matt O'Reilly on this show, because he is. I think he's developing incredibly under the watchful eye of Brendan Rodgers, and I think he can get even better. Stevie boy, welcome back to the comments. By the way, don't know what was happening yesterday, pal, but we weren't blocking any comments. I didn't have anybody on sniper duty. I don't know what's going on the YouTube side of things, but we weren't blocking any of your comments, buddy. And Tony Cassidy, these games can be won and lost during the transfer window. I get what you mean there. And in the boardroom, Brown Warrior, O'Reilly shut his eyes as he lined up to soak in the atmosphere. Soaked the atmosphere right in it, and doing that, he elevated his own game. We've taken him to our hearts, Matt O'Reilly. Yeah. And by the way, you should have asked his old fella about his love for Aerosmith. Remember, he said in the Celtic View that he was in Aerosmith, Matt O'Reilly. That'd be the first thing I would ask.
Just remembered they told me that they went to see, I think they're pals with the band Thunder. Do you remember them?
No.
Late 80s, early 90s rock band Thunder. So they went to see them, and Matt came with them, and they were at the after show. And there was more people at the after show asking for selfies with Matt O'Reilly than there was with the band.
Brilliant. Just when you say that the band Thunder, I'm just thinking leather, long hair, hairspray, what I mean? Chains, all that kind of stuff. Aye, I can imagine. Magnet, you've won the award today. What a roller coaster of a night. On reflection, I think we played well and deserved to win overall. Things are looking up. Yeah, it's sometimes hard to see it that way, Magnet, but I totally get what you mean. Stephen Sloan reckons we really need to improve on our records, league records at home, Champions League. I'll tell you what, we didn't play many games in the European Cup or the Champions League in the beginning of that run, but it was played 18, won 14. After 2010, we have played 16 at home and won 3. We have been stagnant in Europe for 13 years. I think we will improve. And, last season, Kev, one of the frustrations for me is I felt last season we were introducing certain players like Matt O'Reilly, like Rio Hatate, Kyogo, and others at that time. Giakoumakis was in that bracket. We were introducing them to the level of Champions League. And I was looking forward to seeing how that developed this season. But it's almost like we've seen a bit of another sidestep or a reset with a new gaffer coming in, new players coming in. So that for me is the biggest frustration, Kev. But games like last night, what we learned from the players and what we learned in adversity against Feyenoord will hold us in good stead, moving into the remaining 4 games in this campaign and on to next season as well.
Aye, but they've been saying that for the last 13 years, eh?
We were talking about that 5 years ago in the toll booth. We opened the show up talking about that. Yeah.
I think some folk have been calling it Groundhog Day, and it is completely Groundhog Day, and you've just got to hope at one time it improves. You've just really got to hope one time it improves. And we cannot look. I all ken about the starters and all of that, right? We all know about the starters, and it would have been better to sign starters. But you've got to have a look at what we've got, and I think we've got some decent players in that there. And we've done well the last 2 games. We haven't got the results, but we've done well. And sometimes that's all you can take. Sometimes that's really all you can take out of it.
Right, so let's rewind a wee bit, Kev, right? It's in the summer. Where are the 3 starters? I've heard the figure 3 getting used. I used it before I seen that comment, so I obviously agreed with Barry. If you bring the 3 starters in, and I'm talking that quality, and people use Jota and Carter Vickers as a reference, but I'm talking the quality of Abada, Kyogo, Starfelt, a lot of the players we brought in who have become starters straight in the team. Where in that team last night are you looking and saying we need a starter there, and there? Where's the 3 areas? Is it that obvious? I think he's gone quiet at the vital moment. The big drum beat. There we go.
I think it could have been anywhere on the pitch. Truthfully, if you want to improve, could be anywhere on the pitch, but you've got to maybe have a look at. I still think we miss a dynamic midfielder, a real big enforcer in the middle of the park, and I also think we miss Giakoumakis.
I think Kyogo goes off earlier last night if you've got Giakoumakis sitting on the bench rather than no.
Mm-hmm. Is that something you would share? I've seen a lot of comments about Giakoumakis, and some of them I'm looking at. I liked him when he was at the club, but I mean, last night it would have made a difference, JP. And this isn't a dig at O, by the way. I don't think O's getting enough game time to properly develop. He's not looked the same kind of force in terms of the impact he's making this season as he did last season. So it's not a dig at O. But we have lost a wee bit up there. We've lost a bit on the right wing. We've lost a bit, in some areas of the park.
At the end of the day, Giakoumakis is a Champions League goal scorer. He scored in the Champions League. Yes, he might not be the most prolific in the Champions League, but he's done it at that level. So we know that he can do it at that level. Kyogo has now joined him in that bracket. I was going to say pantheon.
That great pantheon of Celtic strikers, yes.
But you know what I mean? He has done it at that level. So if we had him, you're bringing on a guy who has scored in last season's Champions League. So you know that he can do it at that level. I think just with regards to the midfield, I mean, last night your striker scored a goal, and that's what you want a striker to do. So I don't really know what maybe Kyogo could have got a second, and then you wouldn't have been worried about getting Giakoumakis off the bench. Your left winger scores a goal. It's denied by literally nothing of a touch on it. And we're talking about a different story today. We're sitting here looking for reasons to gush about how great last night was. But the flip of it is it didn't happen. We got beat 2-1. So it's Kev's parallel universes. And if we didn't have a sort of narrow parallel universe to go towards, then you would have more cause for concern going into the next game. Who's to say we don't produce a performance against Atletico Madrid where things do go our way? Because Brendan Rodgers said that in his post-match. He said, I think we need to be completely switched on at all points in the game, and we also probably need a bit of things to go for us as well, because clearly they did it. The red card that you pointed out, the Maeda touch,
we're having a different conversation. We're having a completely different conversation.
The Carter Vickers mistake, the fall, you're not expecting that to happen with Carter Vickers. You're never in a million years are you expecting him to be the one that does a Lagerbielke at Ibrox and loses concentration or whatever. You just don't expect that from him because he's been so solid. But these are the things that are sent to test us, and that's as much as it's horrible. That's why we go back and why we always want to see Celtic play, because we want to be at that game where it changes. Because the feeling when that happens, and it will happen, we will win a game. I really hope it's this season. But when it does happen, it'll be euphoria. And I'm not making my 9:30 appointment this morning. I'm struggling to
make your 12:30. Aye, exactly.
12:30. That's just the things that change your life, and it's that's why we support Celtic. That's why we love this club and have so much willingness for them to do well, and it's what keeps you going back. It's the addiction.
It is. It definitely is. And by the way, obviously comments will differ. Roddy reckons we need left back, goalie, centre back, centre mid, and CJ right wing, left back, goalie. We'll all have our different opinions about it, but I'm pretty sure if Brendan Rodgers had been given 3 starters at least, then last night would have been a much more realistic task for him. I think he's doing tremendously well with the squad that he's inherited and the signings that he's been presented with to coach. And I think he'll continue to do that. But, come the next transfer window, hopefully we approach it in a different way. I've got to say thank you to every single one of you. 1,000, over 1,000 we peeked at there on the live stream. Great story from JP. I wasn't going to bring that up, JP, but thanks for sharing it. That was brilliant at the Nick Kershaw gig. Superb. Really enjoyed that.
It could be left unsaid, but what's the point in that? Not talking about that. I wanted to tell people how sound Matt O'Reilly's mum and dad are. I'm not telling them to make myself look good or anything like that. I just wanted to recount a really amazing experience meeting the parents of somebody, by the way, who I told them the story about watching Matt being in the middle of the Bernabeu and then him phoning. His mum said at that point that the security in the Bernabeu weren't going to let them down, and somebody that they were with spoke Spanish and said, "That's his mum and dad. That's their son." And the security were like, "Because you know what, Spanish police and Spanish security are like, they're not one for, they don't take prisoners." So they got let down, and I said to his mum, I was like, "Oh, he was sitting on the pitch taking a video of the ground before that happened." She was like, "Oh, I didn't even know that he was doing that. I just thought he walked over." And I said, "I was drinking in the experience," because of course you would.
Oh, but you do that, JP. That's part of your process after a game, is to sit and drink in the bad experience as well. And it turned out that you ended up on the telly, and all your pals made you a meme for a long time after it.
Talked about last night. That was talked about last night. Maribor at home, I'll never live that down. I was photoshopped into some pretty bizarre scenarios, like Jay-Z and Beyonce's swimming pool behind Cheryl Cole's curtain. Yeah, I have creative and inventive friends when it comes to Photoshop. So yeah, there was worse than that. I'll not say what they were, but
you can send them in the WhatsApp. No, but another thing about that story though is it does show that the player and his family have embraced the club. I think.
Absolutely,
they definitely have.
And his gran loves Celtic. She's been over and been at Celtic Park, I think, 5 or 6 times. So yeah, she's totally bought in. And by the way, doesn't just watch Acsom, watches all the Celtic podcasts. She properly loves.
Right into it. That's incredible.
I mean, how good is that to know that, just to find that out? I would never have known that, having not had that conversation with them. Do you know?
No, it's brilliant. And thanks for sharing it. We will be live tomorrow night with Chris Sutton. For anybody who's coming along, come along and say hello. I'm really looking forward to it. I love getting out and about and speaking to Celtic legends. So I'm going to go through there and get that set up just now. Thanks for your continued support. If you do fancy voting for us, we're up for a couple of awards in November down in Liverpool. And I've put the link under the video if you want to give us a wee vote on there as well. We're up for 2, as I said. Like us on YouTube, subscribe to the channel if you want to get involved in the chat, and come back tomorrow at 12:30 because we'll be back to talk about all things Celtic. All that's left for me to say is thank you once again to JP Mason and to Kevin Graham for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers.